Evolution Witness is my favorite MTG Pauper card from Modern Horizons 3. It has Adapt, an ability that lets you put 2 counters on it if it doesn't already have any, and a second one that allows you to return any permanent from your graveyard to your hand every time you put counters on it. Recognizing its potential, I couldn't resist sharing not one, but 2 powerful decks that feature this card. At first, I thought putting the likes of Iron Apprentice and Ashnod's Altar would create a strong synergy with it. This synergy creates infinite mana and infinite enter the battlefield triggers. So, to abuse it, I decided to run Essence Warden to gain infinite life and Wirewood Herald, as a tutor for my combo pieces. Since I'm already doing this, I would also add the Ivy Lane Denizen and Safehold Elite combo into the mix, as both are also elves. Because of this, I need a second sacrifice outlet, and Carrion Feeder is perfect for the job. As if this deck needed more combos, I also added Basking Broodscale and Sadistic Glee to it, as it's a 2-card combo that can grow the Broodscale infinite without the need for extra cards. The enchantment also works greatly with Evolution Witness to return permanents to my hand every time a creature dies, so I can retrieve missing pieces when needed. Finally, Rainclaw Trow, Masked Vandal, and Sylvan Ranger are utility creatures that can shine once in a blue moon in one of my 2 new decks from Modern Horizons 3. In this game, we will be playing against Dimir Terror with the newly added Sneaky Snacker, creature that players are overhyping, calling it the new Arclight Phoenix. Spoiler alert, it is far from it. Anyway, we start by playing an Essence Warden, followed by a Wirewood Herald. At their end step, I use the Deadly Dispute, which gets countered, but we still manage to get our Ranger. So we play it, take a land from our deck, and play a mere Scrappling before passing the turn. The opponent draws some more cards, and back on my turn, I attack first. They take some damage, but also kill one of my creatures. Since they are tapped out, I play an Evolution Witness post-combat and pass. On their turn, a Brainstorm and a Mental Note put 2 Sneaky Snackers into the graveyard, hoping to return them to the battlefield next turn. Because of this, I decide to keep pressuring them, and post-combat, I play a Denizen that surprisingly hits the battlefield. While they try to kill it with an Agony Warp, I am able to save it by putting a counter on it with the mere Scrappling ability. However, back-to-back cantrips return the 2 fairies to the battlefield, and a Tolarian Terror joins the party. The opponent attacks, and I block with Dimir, deciding to sacrifice it to return it again to my hand. That said, a Cryptic Serpent joins the party on my opponent's side, and I draw another Swamp for the turn. Now I go for a Broodscale, which meets a counter, and I pass again. Brainstorm enables my opponent to look at more cards from their library. Eventually, they find a removal for my combo enabler, draw more cards with Deep Analysis, and now they attack for a bunch while holding counter magic. I block, and they kill my Evolution Witness, so we go to game number 2. Since this was an experimental list, I went without a sideboard, but I trust games 2 and 3 will yield faster results. While not great, this hand is okay, and with the help of Carrion Feeder, I can now sacrifice my Herald to tutor for one of the elves I may need, like Safehold Elite. Or at least that was the plan because they countered it. Because of this, I play a Mirror and pass. They cycle a Suffocating Fumes for a card, and back on my turn, I play an Evolution Witness in the hopes that it can survive next turn. The opponent passes the turn, so back on mine, I attack. They use a second Fumes to try and get rid of my board. To this, I sacrifice my Mirror to pump the Witness and return the artifact creature to my hand, while also sacrificing the Herald to fetch an elf and draw 2 more cards, creating a treasure token. That is called value right there. Still, my opponent is able to kill my remaining creature and play a big one of their own. Since they are tapped out, I can now play the Witness and the Scrappling, along with a Sadistic Glee, to return 2 permanents at a time from the graveyard to my hand. The opponent is not thrilled by this idea and plays 2 other big creatures on the field and passes. A second Witness joins the field, and I decide to return a land to play my Mirror. If the opponent fails to find removal, this play means they can't get through my board without losing a creature. To this, they draw 2 more cards and pass. At the end of their turn, I sacrifice my Mirror to get back 2 permanents to my hand. On my turn, I start to fill my board with creatures, but they manage to counter a second Glee. The good news is that I can still return it to my hand at any time. On their turn, they play 2 more creatures. At the end phase, I fetch my Elite, and now I can play it along with my Denizen, putting a Glee on the second Witness and attacking. This is critical because if they don't block, they die, as I can grow any of my creatures endlessly. They block, and after some clicking involving putting counters on the Elite and sacrificing it again, I get rid of all the blockers and pass. On their turn, the opponent draws 2 more cards and plays new creatures, but they are in the same spot as before and eventually scoop. Unlike my previous hands, This one is great in terms of pressure, so we keep. The opponent plays a fairy, and I follow up with a ranger to fetch a land and attack. This may not have been the greatest idea, as they can return it to the field with a brainstorm, but mistakes were made. A second fairy joins the party, and I cast my feeder and play the rod farm before attacking and passing. On their turn, they use a single fumes to get rid of my feeder, so all I can do is play a land and pass, not slamming the witness and playing around removal. Ideally, I want to have 5 mana so I can use the adaptability in response to the removal. Regardless, I play an elite, which resolves and pass. They use removal on it, and on their turn, play a spell bomb. With a second witness, I can now play it safely and use the adaptability in response to removal or their spell bomb activation. This is what happens, so despite losing my graveyard, I can still return the witness with a second one for 5 mana. The opponent then plays a deep analysis to draw 2 more cards, but more importantly, to return 3 fairies to the field. Because of this, all I can do now is rebuild the board the best I can and pass. On their turn, they draw 2 more cards and attack. I can't prevent the damage, so I take 6 and they pass. I attack for the same amount on my turn, and I play the Witness and the Herald to have more presence on the ground. More importantly, I fetch my Essence Warden to start gaining incidental life. The opponent eventually finds a cast down to kill the bigger Witness, so the plan now is to return it with the other one, and I decide to do it while they don't have black mana untapped. I top deck a Glee, but a counterspell denies it. Regardless, the second Witness enters the battlefield and returns the Sadistic Glee, so all that is now left is to return the Herald, sacrifice it and the Elite to eventually replay it alongside the Denizen and gain infinite life. The opponent attacks and plays a second blocker, but now the field is set. Upon realizing what was going on, the opponent scoops. While this game was great, I think some improvements should be made. I threw away the Safehold Elite / Ivy Lane Denizen combo for the second deck and added Duress and Mesmeric Fiend to disrupt my opponent's plans. I also added Unearth to revive my dead combo pieces and Chromatic Star, Generous Int, and Troll of Khazad Dûm for more synergies with Evolution Witness. With the right setup, I can manage infinite mana and card draw with Chromatic Star. Finally, Fanatical Offering and Deadly Dispute add more card advantage, and as such, Khalni Garden also made it to the final deck. From there, it's pretty much the same deck as before, except I failed to mention that I also threw away the Iron Apprentice and Ashnod's Altar combo, and added Rubblebelt Maverick instead to put counters on both the Evolution Witness and Basking Broodscale, and fill my graveyard. Is this deck better than the previous one to take over Pauper top ones? Let's find out. In this game, I will showcase the power of the deck and all the lines you need to know, including but not limited to gaining infinite life, draining your opponent for infinite life, and drawing your entire library while generating infinite mana. I decided to keep this hand because I was on the draw, and a second land opens up many possibilities for it. Sadly, I had to wait a few turns and got my butt kicked, thanks to a Putrid Leech. To make matters worse, an opposing Essence Warden is very bad news, as now I can't kill them with only one Nightblade. Instead, I have to find a second one in this game. If you have been paying attention, this deck does not run a single removal piece on the main deck. Meanwhile, my opponent is enjoying the happy life while beating me down as I struggle to get my swamp, but I eventually find it and manage to make them discard another difficult card to beat if it gets resolved. Still, this does not fix my main problems, as now I go from 16 to 10. The silver lining now is that I can play the Broodscale and the Glee to aim and stabilize next turn. They didn't have removal for it, so I just blocked and went down to 3 life. The good news is that this now triggers my Broodscale, and if I get back my Nightblade, this basically means I get a creature with infinite power and infinite life as well, at least in theory, because they will grow their vampire to infinity as well. Because of this, I decided to attack with the Broodscale and force them to block, but to my surprise, they had Tamiyo's safekeeping, so they don't lose their Warden. A Mesmeric Fiend made sure they didn't have anything funny in their hand, and I managed to play the Rumble to get the only mirror left in my deck and pass. Of course, they can't attack into my board, so they just pass the turn back after flipping their blade. I used Deadly Dispute to draw a few more cards, and with the help of the Rumble, I found the Witness I needed. Now, it's just a matter of putting the Glee on it, and I can start sacrificing a token to return the Chromatic Star to my hand, filter the mana, draw a card, and repeat the process over and over again. This process was tedious, but after drawing almost all my deck, I was able to find the Nightblade, which basically denies the effect of the Essence Warden, allowing me to win the game after way too many clicks. Now that I've shown how this deck works, It's time to face one of the top dogs of the format, Grixis Affinity. While not perfect, this hand is decent as we have ways to get our second land, so we keep. Since our first turns are about setting up, not much is really happening, but it's worth noting that our opponent might be getting somewhat mana screwed as they cast a reckless Deadly Dispute to sacrifice their land in hopes of better plays. With this board state, I decided to lead with a Duress, but it got countered, so I followed with a Deadly Dispute to look for the rest of our combo pieces, and return a Broodscale to play with the help of an Unearth. The opponent tried to kill it at the end of the turn, but forgot about my Mir's ability, so I was able to save it. After a second failed dispute, our opponent conceded. For this match, bringing in all the Troublemaker offs is a must, and we trimmed some of our less relevant cards. I used a Malevolent Rumble to dig for an oof with no luck, but at least I got a troll I can cycle for a land later. On their turn, the opponent played a fairy and a land and passed. The oof appeared, and going for the black source is critical as it shuts down their Deadly Disputes for now. On their turn, the opponent played a second Wellspring and a third land, and back on my turn, I attacked and forgot that the oof ability is only triggered when cast, so reanimating it with Unearth is useless. Nevertheless, I did, and took the opportunity to fetch a second oof and cast it to remove yet another of their lands in the following turn. They untapped and passed. On my turn, I attacked and played a Nightblade, trying to bait a counter, but it resolved, so all I could do for now was pass back the turn while holding Fanatical Offering. With no black mana to be found, the opponent just passed. Back on my turn, I attacked again. Post-combat, a Broodscale meta counter and an oof managed to exile a land as planned. The opponent passed once more, and I used the offering to draw 2 more cards. After surveilling some cards to my graveyard, I attacked and put my opponent down to 8. Finally, the opponent found a black source, and after chaining some spells together, they put into play 2 creatures before passing the turn. Still, I decided to lead with a Duress, but in retrospect, I should have just hardcast the Generous End to put more pressure on the board. Still, I attacked, leaving them down to 2 life. Their Deadly Dispute drew them 3 more cards, and they passed. I drew the Broodscale and decided to play it before attacking. They blocked and tried to remove my Nightblade with a Galvanic Blast. In response, I used the adaptability on my Broodscale to create an Eldrazi token, and I sacrificed the creature to drain them for 1 life. They used a second blast to kill another creature, and this way, I finally won the game against the best deck of the format.